Today we are going to be discussing the new topic of transcendentalism. We have already established a class-wide definition of both conformity and nonconformity, but today transcendentalism will show you that there have been philosophical movements based on the value of nonconformity, individualism, and you will be able to also identify other characteristics of the literature written by the transcendentalists. Here we establish a brief timeline of transcendentalism. From the 1830s to the 1850s, transcendentalism thrived, but really only for that 20-year span did we ever see that production of transcendentalist literature. We usually, in the literary field, primarily focus on Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau when discussing transcendentalist literature. For instance, Ralph Waldo Emerson's role in transcendentalism includes the focus on the Unitarian split. The Unitarian Church experienced a split or divergence into transcendentalism, which was primarily led by Emerson. We can also see Emerson's role in his publication of a text titled Nature, by which he established a sort of guideline for transcendentalists, and then in his text Self-Reliance, where he establishes the value of individualism and self-reliance. Even though the 1830s to 1850s includes a time frame for transcendentalist literature, after 1850, you still see transcendentalists in history as active figures. For instance, Thoreau's opposition to the Fugitive Slave Act, where he practiced civil disobedience, is primarily recognized as occurring in 1856. What I want you to do is spend some time, pause the video, and research any of the events on the previous page, whether it's Emerson's connection to Unitarianism, nature, or self-reliance, whether it's the Fugitive Slave Act and Thoreau's connection to it. Find some more information on either of those so we can expand on it later tomorrow in class. Now here's the broad definition that we find when we look up transcendentalism by just typing it into Google. Take some time to review this definition, then pause the screen in order to spend some time to research any of the ideas on this page that you might not understand. For instance, I would look up Romanticism, or what it means to be a reaction to rationalism. Read over the definition and do some research, whether you're looking up Immanuel Kant or some more details about Henry David Thoreau. I want you to come to class with something to say about the research you gathered after pausing this slide. Now, let's briefly evaluate who the transcendentalists were deemed to be by society. A fusion of nonconformists, they were not worried about fitting in, spiritualists, naturalists, individualists, and even communalists. Transcendentalists focused on the spiritual world and connections to the divine, nature and connections between nature and basically divine power. And at the same time, transcendentalists prioritize individualism and group support, such as communalism. This might seem to be contradictory, and it definitely is to some extent. That's just to show that transcendentalists, in their nonconformity, were also extremely contradictory and complicated. Think about some people you might know who might fit into some of these categories of being a nonconformist, a spiritualist, a naturalist, or maybe an individualist. Come to class with a person like that in mind. Please review the quotes on this slide. Now stop and respond to the above quotes in your class notebook. What are the quotes saying about individualism and conformity. Pause. Read the quote on this slide. Under a government which imprisons unjustly, the true place for a just man is also a prison. Thoreau takes a stance, backed by his philosophy of civil disobedience, to say that disobeying law is a way to reject immoral laws. For instance, Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King both practiced civil disobedience when they disobeyed unjust laws because they believed them to be discriminatory, and this resulted in their arrest. Stop and answer the following in your class notebook. Can you think of examples of nonconformity in our culture today? After spending time considering the strategy of nonconformity, let's refocus on conformity. Following established rules or norms, prepare to answer the following question by researching the term collectivism on your own. What is the difference between conformity and collectivism? Please re-watch this video as much as possible in order to understand the questions being asked of you, to pause and complete all the tasks, and to then also commit to your own individual research to come to class prepared.